This conversation is powered by Google Illuminate. Check out illuminate.google.com for more. Today's discussion centers on a fascinating piece of legislation, Section 11A, Pricing of Services, from the Federal Reserve Board. It's a deep dive into how the Fed prices its services to depository institutions. This isn't just about accounting. It impacts the entire financial system.
Precisely. The pricing of Federal Reserve services isn't arbitrary. It's governed by specific principles designed to ensure fairness, efficiency, and a stable financial landscape. It's a complex balancing act.
And a crucial one. The seemingly simple act of setting fees has far-reaching consequences. Let's start with the core mandate. What are the overarching goals of this section?
The primary goal is to establish a transparent and cost-based pricing structure for Federal Reserve services. This promotes accountability and prevents unfair advantages for certain institutions.
So transparency is key, but how does the Fed ensure that its pricing reflects actual costs?
The legislation mandates that pricing should cover all direct and indirect costs. This includes everything from the obvious, like personnel and operational expenses, to less obvious factors like imputed costs, essentially, what the services would cost if provided by a private firm.
Imputed costs are interesting. You elaborate on how those are calculated and why they're included?
Imputed costs account for things like taxes a private entity would pay and the return on capital they'd expect. Including these ensures that the Fed isn't subsidizing services, creating an uneven playing field.
That makes sense. It levels the playing field between the Fed and private sector competitors, but the legislation also mentions competitive factors. How are those balanced against cost recovery?
The Fed must consider market forces. Pricing can't be so high that it stifles competition or access to essential services, especially for smaller institutions. It's a delicate balance.
Let's talk about the specific services covered under this pricing scheme. The list is quite comprehensive.
Indeed. It includes currency and coin services, check clearing, wire transfers, ACH services, settlement services, securities safekeeping, and even Federal Reserve float. Essentially, the core services that underpin the nation's financial system.
And the inclusion of any new services is forward-looking. How does the Fed ensure that new services are priced fairly and consistently with existing ones?
The principles established in Section 11A provide a framework for pricing new services. The same cost-based approach, considering both direct and indirect costs and competitive factors, applies.
The legislation explicitly states that these services must be available to both member and non-member depository institutions at the same price. What's the rationale behind this?
Equal access is crucial for maintaining a level playing field and ensuring fair competition. It prevents the Fed from favoring member banks. However, non-members might face additional requirements, such as maintaining sufficient balances for clearing purposes.
So while the price is the same, there might be other conditions attached to accessing these services as a non-member. That's a key distinction. The legislation also addresses budgetary implications. How does the pricing structure interact with the operating budgets of Federal Reserve banks?
The Fed is required to adjust its operating budgets to reflect changes in service volume. Any savings generated must be returned to the U.S. Treasury. This ensures fiscal responsibility and prevents unnecessary spending.
This is a crucial aspect of accountability. It ties pricing directly to efficiency and prevents the Fed from retaining excess funds. The section also specifies that interest on items credited before actual collection should be charged at the prevailing federal funds rate. Why is this important?
This ensures that the Fed doesn't implicitly subsidize banks by providing interest-free float. Charging the market rate for this service is fair and aligns with market practices.
It prevents an unfair advantage for banks and ensures that the Fed's pricing reflects actual market conditions. Section 11A also contains a provision regarding deposits from other depository institutions. What's the significance of this?
This provision removes restrictions on where depository institutions can deposit funds, including at Federal Reserve banks. It promotes efficiency and flexibility in the financial system.
This simplifies the process and reduces regulatory burdens on banks. Let's revisit the long-run pricing principles. How does the Fed ensure that its pricing remains sustainable and equitable over time?
The cost-based approach, combined with regular reviews and adjustments, ensures long-term sustainability. The Fed must continuously monitor costs and market conditions to adapt its pricing accordingly.
This dynamic approach is essential for adapting to changes in the financial landscape and technological advancements. The emphasis on explicit pricing is noteworthy. Why is it so important that all services are priced explicitly?
Explicit pricing enhances transparency and accountability. It prevents hidden costs or subsidies and allows for easier comparison with private sector services.
This clarity is crucial for both the Fed and the institutions it serves. The legislation outlines a timeline for implementing the pricing principles and fee schedule. What was the process like?
The legislation mandated a phased approach. First, the Fed published pricing principles for public comment, then developed a fee schedule based on those principles, and finally implemented the schedule.
This phased approach allowed for public input and ensured a smooth transition to the new pricing structure. What has been the overall impact of Section 11A on the financial system?
Section 11A has significantly improved transparency and fairness in the pricing of Federal Reserve services. It has also promoted efficiency and accountability within the Fed itself.
It's testament to the importance of well-defined regulations in maintaining a stable and equitable financial system. Looking ahead, what are some of the ongoing challenges or considerations related to the pricing of Federal Reserve services?
The rapid pace of technological change and the evolving nature of financial services present ongoing challenges. The Fed must continuously adapt its pricing principles and fee schedule to reflect these changes.
The Fed must remain agile and responsive to the dynamic nature of the financial landscape. So, in essence, Section 11A is more than just a set of pricing rules. It's a cornerstone of a fair and efficient financial system. It's a testament to the ongoing effort to balance cost recovery with market realities and equitable access.
Absolutely. It's a complex but crucial aspect of the Federal Reserve's operations, ensuring transparency, accountability, and a level playing field for all depository institutions.
That was a great discussion. Thank you for your insights.